have our work cut out for us, however, when it comes to the renewable electricity standard. Now, while we're still trying to understand the implications of the draft released by Chairman Waxman and Chairman Markey, my understanding as of today is that it basically would not count toward the RES any pre-commercial thinnings, or any residues from federal lands. Simply put, that's a non-starter with me. I've heard through the grapevine that some on the committee staff of Energy and Commerce have stated that they think they have a Herseth Sandlin problem as it relates to the definition of the RES. So we're taking the lead here on this issue. We'll continue to work with you to do it. And again, I expect that colleagues on both sides of the aisle will want to use this as the opportunity to find some way of synthesizing these various definitions and making sure that forest lands, whether they're private or public lands, are treated fairly as it relates to the new energy economy. On the committee, let me also say that not just the work that I'm doing, but on the Energy and Commerce Committee and the subcommittee that will be taking up this draft legislation, we've got a fellow Blue Dog colleague of mine, Mike Ross from Arkansas, who is an original co-sponsor of the bill that I've reintroduced with Greg Walton. On the full committee, Bart Stupak from Michigan, also an original co-sponsor of this legislation. I haven't talked to them specifically since the draft was just released, but I would imagine they have the same concerns that I do about a biomass definition for the RES that would mirror the same problems we've had with the RFS. So I am hopeful that the committee chairman, that Speaker Pelosi and others in leadership will continue to work with us to make the necessary changes to ensure that all can be involved in achieving the goals that the administration would like to see, that the 25 by 25 coalition I know would like to see for full participation of a broad array of stakeholders to achieve these very ambitious targets that will create new jobs for the next generation of people living in rural America, to have an additional economic opportunity to participate in rural energy, or renewable energy, as well as the possibility of a carbon market. So I encourage you to maintain your ongoing dialogue as you've been in the lead for doing. I know this is your 5th such conference. I came to Congress just over 5 years ago and started working with you pretty early on, given my work in agriculture and the focus on energy and renewable energy for South Dakota. But you know, Western South Dakota and the businesses there stand to benefit greatly. Agricultural producers across my state and many others stand to benefit greatly, so long as we're at the table. And your coalition has ensured that we have been at the table and that we need to continue to be, as we put in the details, fine-tune these drafts, because as Secretary Salazar said, we now are at a point where federal policy is prepared to take action. I don't know and can't predict if a climate change and energy bill will be signed into law by the end of 2009 or even at the end of the 111th Congress. But we are drafting legislation. We are moving it forward. It may not have the votes, depending on how it's structured, given the common goals that we have in common. But there is no reason that any of us should sit back and simply say no. We should be at the table, working to influence it in a way that makes sense for the people that we work for, the people that we represent in your respective industries, and the people that we represent as voters who send us to Congress to make sure that their interests and voices are heard. So some will say this isn't the right time to do it, but again, if we structure it the right way, it can be an economic opportunity that helps us grow our way out of this recession that we face without putting an unnecessary burden on consumers in rural America, depending on how we structure the rebates, but also going back to the issue of the role of agriculture and forestry, a real economic opportunity to sustain and grow rural America, for us to be part of the solution to the problem if we're proactive in addressing it. I am just going to wrap up because I know I'm standing between you and lunch, and my stomach's growling, so I can only imagine what yours is doing. But it is a great opportunity for all of us to continue to work together and ensure that what we're proposing isn't about turning our national forests into fuel farms. And what we're proposing, whether for private land folks or for our public land, is to utilize all of our resources. We can go through the screenings that the Secretary put forward as it relates to wind and solar and geothermal. But we also know that we have residue literally sitting there in our federal forests that should be able to be used for cogen or for transportation fuel. Otherwise, it rots and promotes methane in the atmosphere worse than carbon. Or it sits there as an additional hazardous fuel source that makes these western forest fires burn with more intensity, burn with more danger to communities throughout the West. And it simply is something that we have to change if it's going to get the support of those of us that represent these types of interests in agriculture and forestry. And we look forward to working with you, as we have done in the past, to get this done. So thank you very much for the opportunity to address all of this.